one day I came across this scripture, right? And I just love, this is literally my favorite scripture now. This is what brought me in, basically. And it says, I can't remember where it is in the Bible, but it's like, the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of the world. And that literally like hit me so hard. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay. So whoever wrote this acknowledged that all of this sounds foolish. And this is in the Bible, so it means that people in the Bible also acknowledge that this is foolish, yet, you know, they stand by it as being wiser than what we could know, which is obviously like something that is obviously true. Like, we don't know everything as human beings. Our wisdom, you know, is fickle. It's very fickle. It changes from here to there. So yeah, that just really hit me, and I was just kind of like, okay, I accept this as a first premise. And so that's how I truly stepped into God. I was like, I'm gonna step on the basis of this scripture, that whatever nonsense is in this Bible is gonna be wiser than the wisdom I can find in the world. Yeah, so that's where I started from. So then I kept going, and then obviously I have, you know, follow-up meetings with like post-psychosis services. So one day I go for a meeting with the doctor, and it's like a lot of time has passed in between these events. So at this time I'm not taking meds. Like, I stopped taking meds very, very early because I just, you know, it's just a struggle. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it at all, so I just stopped taking them. So I went to the doctor, and he's obviously asking me like, how are you been doing, like what have you been up to? And I was like, oh yeah, I've started going to church actually. And then he was like, oh, like, does that work for you? And then I was just kind of like, yeah, I guess, because obviously I'm still very new to it, so I'm still trying to figure it out. So then I say to him like, but what I'm struggling to understand is, why are certain things allowed in church but not anywhere else? Like, the experiences that I had and that the Bible talks about, psychologically, spiritually, whatever, like, they're very similar. I don't know if they're entirely the same, because I can only obviously talk from my perspective, but to me they're very, very similar, and they certainly look very similar. So why are they allowed in one context and not in the other? And he didn't answer me. He was just like, just keep going to church. And then I was like, okay. And for me, that kind of really helped me to reframe my experience. So it just kind of stood out to me that whatever is actually happening in psychosis and whatever is happening in church, right, there's similar experiences. So that signals to me that it's not necessarily a negative experience. It's not necessarily a disease. It's not necessarily what you've been taught to think it is. It's obviously something that happens a lot in people's lives, which means that it's not an abnormal experience. It's just something that we go through, and that there are other ways to manage it than what is, you know, what is usually taught. So for me, it was kind of like, okay, I can try to manage what I went through, manage my experiences through this lens. And since I've done that, honestly, my life, it's just changed. So I got baptized, you know, I gave my life to God, to Christ, and all that jazz. But then I still kind of struggle with sharing this experience and how I actually came to God, because it's not, you know, a story that you hear all the time. And even if it is, you know, it's not really a story that you would take seriously. Like, a big fear for me is, or was, being dismissed based on my previous experience. So it's like, how can I now claim that God is real when, you know, you were crazy at this time? So how do you know that's this new period that you're in is not just an extension of those delusions? Like, how do you know that, you know, you're not just searching for comfort after this big distressing ordeal and all this stuff, that you're making it up, or you're not falling into the same like psychological traps as others. And yeah, that's kind of something that I really struggled with a lot, until I just kind of realized that my experience is what it is, and I'm not really making a claim about the nature of things. I'm just literally sharing my story and things that I've learned from it, and I really feel like other people benefit from it, because sometimes it really does help to just to reframe your experiences. So if you go through your whole life like having these kind of psychotic experiences, but you think they are, you know, manifestations of a diseased part of you, that's not going to be good for you. So you kind of need to know that there are other ways that you can conceptualize it, and that there are other ways that it can be dealt with and managed in a less negative framework, if you see what I'm saying. Yeah, and I guess I also struggled a lot with coming to terms with all of this because of my pride. So before this, you know, I was very actively anti-Abrahamic. It's even like people that I knew from school, when I say like, oh yeah, I go to church now, I'm a Christian, they're like, what? And yeah, I'm just like, yes, like, you know, that's just what happens, isn't it? Like, I don't know, life, when God asks you, like, what are you supposed to do? I'm at a point where I'm pretty confirmed in my position in God and what a godly perspective on mental health and certain experiences have to offer. Yeah, there's like loads of stuff that I found while I was trying to make sense of this. While I actually did like a lot of research, and there's actually like a few clinical psychologists that actually also think that some of these mental health problems have a spiritual basis and are manifestations of a spiritual crisis, which is something that, you know, I can come to talk about later on. But yeah, the idea is that it's not such an absurd idea, and I really think that we need to get out of this framework of dismissing spirituality in our lives, because now it's coming out, you know, that so many people have mental health problems, depression, psychosis, schizophrenia, whatever it is, you know. It's a big thing that's talked about now, isn't it? Because the experiences are becoming more and more common. So what does that mean? It's not like, you know, it's an abnormal thing that needs to be treated and that needs to be gotten rid of. Do you know what I mean? It just needs to be understood and actively managed, because a lot of it, there's a lot of psychological disturbance underlying it. Like, there really is. Yeah, something I can go into at a later time as well. Like, it's like 1 a.m. right now and I'm super tired. I have to go to work in the morning. But yeah, basically that's my, I don't know, is that a good testimony? I feel like I didn't end it well. That's like my story of how I came to God, you know. God is just now my OG. Can I say that? Like, now I stand for Jesus, guy. I feel like I should say more, but I'm not really sure what to say. I kind of just want the story to stand for itself, because at the end of the day, this is the kind of experience that not many people get brought out from. And I feel like people should know that if they have these kinds of experiences, if they have psychosis and they're institutionalized or whatever it is, and you want to explore the spiritual aspects of it, but you feel like you can't, you shouldn't feel like that. You should follow it where it leads you. Like, do not feel like because, you know, what can I say? Because you were delusional that any kind of spiritual manifestation is, that any kind of spiritual thing that manifests in your life afterwards is also going to be seen as delusional. Like, and I don't know, I don't want you to think like that. God doesn't want you to think like that. Like, at the end of the day, if God is calling to you through that experience, that means something. So you should answer the call if it comes to you from that. Yeah, just don't dismiss all your experiences as purely part of some kind of a disease, you know. It's it's not what it is. There's a bit more to it than that. Okay, one of the other things that was actually really hard for me in coming to God after this experience was letting go of what I thought the biblical God was, right? Because obviously I used to be anti-Abrahamic God, because I didn't truly understand who God was at that time. So it's kind of hard to, you know, leave behind all your presuppositions about that when you come to it, because, you know, the Bible has been used in so many negative ways to enslave and manipulate people. It's been used for so many like unsavory services, and it's not always promoted in the best ways, and a lot of Christians are very hypocritical and all that jazz. So it's kind of hard to separate that from God when you first get into it. But honestly, you just kind of have to keep in mind that at the end of the day, if you have this kind of experience, then you're coming to start a relationship with God. I would say try not to rely too much on the information you hear about God. I would say that you need to actively seek a relationship with Him yourself. That's one of the main things, because there are a lot of misconceptions that keep people away from knowing God. And, you know, people think, you know, that coming to God is just like religion, just ritual, all this stuff, when actually it's deeper than that. It's a relationship, it's love. Do you see what I mean? You come to God to know His love. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. Hope you be blessed and have a good day, have a good evening, whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah.